So you said the words real time a lot, and that's kind of another one of the big hoo-has around this game. And I guess I can't argue that it is a real time game mechanically, but thematically and in practice, how it feels to me when I play it, it's not. A real time game for me is like Pandemic Rapid Response or Escape, like games that are there's a timer, and at the end of that timer, you either have to achieve something or not achieve this. For me, and I don't want to get into the semantics of it, but for me, this is a game that has time as a resource where you need to use the timers to basically work out how many moves can I get in this round? How many things can I do before this round is up? And because obviously the three timers are different times, you're sitting there thinking, right, I can get this 45-second one in before that two ends, maybe then get another 45 in and then rush them all over to the three and get a bunch of threes before that final flip. And that's how I see it. But obviously the fact that I guess you have to say and call it real time has made people react badly by saying I don't like real time games, because I don't like real time games. Like Escape, I played a couple of times and it was just stressful. Like Rapid Response, I did like, but it was very stressful, and I would probably play it with 10% of my friends. The other 90% and my wife, no chance, because we're just going to argue. Whereas this, I would play with anyone. I would play this game with absolutely anyone. There is no limitations in the fact that there are timers involved in this. So I'm interested in your take on that, because some of the reviews have obviously called it chaotic and hectic. It absolutely is not. The best way I've heard this summed up was someone on BGG said, this is not a case of, wow, I've got 15 seconds left before I have to do something. It's not that. It's the flip of that. It's, oh, okay, in 15 seconds, I can now do this. It's the other way around. You're just, I thought that was a brilliant way to sum it up. Obviously, you've probably played this game more than anyone in the world right now. What are your thoughts on that? Do you see this as a hectic real time thing? Does the real time term bug you?
So yeah, it's an interesting question. I've really torn and struggle with how to describe it or phrase it to other people, because like I said, we really are trying to do something different. And so, you know, I don't necessarily try to shy away from the term real time. It is a real time game. I could certainly see that people would say that. But to your point, it feels really different. So the question is, how do you pitch it to people? Do you say this is a real time game, but it's really different from other real time games you played? Or do you say this has timers, but it's so different that I wouldn't even call it real time? You know, and I don't know what the right way to pitch it is. The point is, it's difficult to pitch it well because it is so different. But I do love that you can see that in most of the reviewers that have posted on the game, and other people playing the game that are just starting to post now, that it seems pretty consistent. People will say this is really different, and I don't even know how to describe it to you. You know, a lot of people are just sort of left with that. They say this is something new, this is something really unique, and they'll go through trying to describe the experience, but it really is something different. And so, you know, that was my dream from the get-go, was to make something new and different. And if you're going to make something new and different, you're always going to have trouble with the message, right? Because trying to tell people something brand new, you know, whoever the first guy that came up with punk rock music or whatever is like, no, it seems like rock and roll, but I'm going to have a pink mohawk with my head shaved and we're going to do 3 chords, but it's going to be crazy. And, you know, like when you come up with the idea and you pitch it, it sounds so stupid and crazy. But now there's a billion people who go to a punk rock show every weekend.
Yeah.
Once people can go to shows on the weekend, once they've discovered it. So it's always difficult when you're coming up with something new. And I'm not saying that I'm some super genius who like has invented punk rock music or a whole new genre, but I do hope it's something new and different, and it takes a concept of real time, which has existed before. And again, I'm not some genius who thought of putting a sand timer game that in a game that's everywhere, and you can see that all sorts of places. But hopefully this is the way, like you said, the way it sets up the game, so it's not a clock on you. It's kind of like this little clockwork machine that you're interacting with as you choose. And the timers, you know, it's gating things, and it feels very different for most people who played it. And the feedback we've gotten, it feels very different from any other real-time game or turn-based game. It's something totally new, and so that means it's always going to be hard to message and describe. But what I hope is that newness comes through. So yeah, there's going to be some people who say sand timers, no thanks. And that's fine. When you're trying to do something new, you're going to have people that just are turned off by it, face value, and that's okay. What I'm excited about is the people who do feel like, you know, oh, this sounds, I keep hearing this is new, this is innovative, this is different. So they're going to get their interest piqued, and they're going to want to experience it for themselves. And I think that there's enough of that going on out there to offset the fact that some people may just not be interested. And like I said, as long as the game finds an audience for people who do love it and enjoy it, to get a chance to try it out, I'm just so excited to have people get to experience it, because I hope it is something new. And as someone who's a hardcore gamer who's played hundreds and hundreds of games, I'm always so delighted when something comes down the pipe that is really new and that is not just, hey, here's some mechanics that are reshuffled this way. Which, don't get me wrong, I still enjoy when that game comes out too, and I'm like, oh, this is a great new worker placement, new engine building, new this. I love that too. But it's so delightful when something truly fresh comes down the pipe, and I'm just like, wow, this is like nothing I've experienced.
Yeah, I would agree with everything you just said there. It does feel new. Like, it's got obviously engine building in it, which I've experienced before. It's got the worker placement, which I've obviously experienced many times before. But with the timers, it does make something new. But I still stand by the fact that it isn't like the game is played in real time with timers, but it's not like those other things. Like, the basic way to describe it differently to those things is when the timer's up, that's the end of the game. In this game, when the timer's up, well, one of three things could happen. One person could decide to move it, one person could decide to leave it, or everybody could have not noticed, and they're all just blindly carrying on. And in the rule, it says all of that is totally fine. And then obviously on the green timer, on the purple timer, when you're flipping that for the final time, that's not even the end of the game. It's just you can't flip any more timers. So you can still do other stuff. And the amount of times I've played, especially with my wife, where we're kind of like looking at each other, and it's kind of getting to the end of the round, and you don't really pay a ton of attention to other people doing it because you're just so focused on your own game.
Yeah.
Looking at what they're doing, you're thinking, are they wanting to flip that purple right away, or are they trying to get one more 45 in? And I love that. And that is totally unique, because it's like, how long is this round going to be? I don't know. How many actions are we going to get? I'm not quite sure. There's like there's a margin in it.
I think we. Sorry, I was going to say. When I came up with the idea, I think that was one of the key insights. Like, having different timers for different actions is part of the interesting part of it, I think. But always one of the heart pieces that made it really interesting was just what you talked about, that when a timer runs out, you don't have to do anything. And in most every other real-time game, when the time runs out, like, a lot of times it's a rules thing. Like, it's a clock on the round. It's like, oh, time's up. Now we all have to stop.
Yeah.
And so then the timer becomes not just the gating of your actions, but it becomes a rules mechanic of when this ends, you must do something. And that adds so much more stress of like, oh, I've got to watch that sand timer, or I have to hear the buzz go off, and now I have to do something immediately when that happens. Yeah. And so that's part of the different feel here is the way the timers are just free to be used by the players as they see fit. And to your point, when the sand runs out, you don't have to do anything. It's just there, and it gives it a more organic flow. Even though, especially, I don't know if you had a chance to play with more player counts, but you play with 4 or 5 players, it's almost always the case that someone is immediately flipping a timer. Yeah. So it still almost is effective as if, as soon as the timer runs out, it gets flipped. But it just feels different because, organically, it's only because the other players around you are doing it. And it just gives a different feel and flow to the game.
Yeah, for sure. So one last question has intrigued me. And as the designer of the game, I feel like you're potentially the only person that can answer this question. Because I've asked a bunch of other people, and they're like, oh, I don't know. So in the game, for anyone who hasn't played it, you've got 3 different timers that are offering 3 different areas of work that you can do. One's 45 seconds, one's 2 minutes, one's 3 minutes. And as we've just been talking about, once the 3-minute timer flips for the last time, you then can't flip any timers anymore. But as we're saying, if you don't want to flip it or haven't spotted it, you don't have to flip it. So it could just be sat there, completely run out, and no one's flipping it yet. So in essence, the game at that point could go on forever. Like, if every player is happy to not flip that last purple timer, you could just keep. So that's why I'm wondering if some people are talking about maxing out their scores. It's because they've just been flipping the green and black just non-stop over and over and over, just leaving that final. Is that the case? Are you just relying on one person to eventually go, okay, time to flip it?
Yeah, no, that's the way the game works. There is nothing, and again, it goes into creating what I think hopefully is the right feel of the game, that you are not required to do anything with any of the timers. So theoretically, you could just let the purple sit there, and you could just go back and forth and back and forth. Okay. Now, in practice, that's the kind of thing that we would have paid attention to if it became an issue. But in all the rounds of playtesting we've done, we've never seen anyone say that it was a problem, and no one ever wanted to flip the purple time. There's always going to be an incentive, and that's part of hopefully what makes the game tick is while you're not required to flip a timer, there's such a strong incentive on all players to be flipping it, because you're going to want to take an action, or you're going to want to get your worker free that did an action. And there's some attractive spots on the purple row. So in all our playtests, we've never seen the case that literally the game just kept going and going, and no one ever wanted to flip the purple. There's always someone who wants to push the game along.
Sure.
But theoretically, you could just sit there and play forever.
Yeah, and it was only theoretically, because every time I've played it, there's always been somebody who has wanted to. There's just been always a couple of times when you kind of look everyone around the room in the eye going, is it me that wants to do it, or is it you that wants to do it? And always, like you said, there's always been somebody who has. It just makes me think, I wonder if there's ever an occasion when none of us, there's got to be some kind of mathematical algorithm where if one person doesn't, but somebody does, that means one person doesn't. There's got to be a way that where everyone doesn't. Like I said, hasn't happened for me before. I'm just interested if it ever has. So
there's an interesting game theory there, which I feel like I have been in that case a couple of times, where sometimes I feel like, oh, I don't really want to flip that timer because I might be able to move this person up or something and it takes some advantage. But then sometimes I'm in a spot where I'm not really sure. I'm kind of feel like, well, it might be good to just let that timer sit there because maybe I'll take this person and move them up there. Yeah. But I'm not really clear on what the benefit is for me. And then it dawns on me, well, the person on my right is not flipping it. And maybe they're not in my situation where they're not certain the benefit. Like maybe they know very well how crucial it is and then I start to think, well, why are they not flipping it? They must have some grand plans and some great benefits. And I'm just over here pondering like whether it might be good or might not. Yeah. And they probably have a much better idea. So let me just go ahead and flip it because they're probably, more clever than me. And I should just keep them from doing whatever they're going to do. That's better than whatever I might have coming down the pipe. So there's almost a game theory where even if you don't have a dog in the fight, you start to think, well, how come they're not flipping it? They must not want that to happen. So let me flip it to spoil their plans. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, that's what happened to me a couple of games ago where I was desperately trying to get one more black action to activate yellow and get some more money. And I was also trying to get another black action to get some more attack red points so I could get my final card in. And all of this was in so I could then move two guys over to the purple before the final purple flip in order to do two actions. But I needed the money to pay for those both actions.
Yeah.
Because I had the character card that allowed me to do two things on the bottom row rather than one. And I realized, and it was all planned out in my mind, but I realized I didn't have enough cash because I needed to add more cash because I could do, in essence, three actions for those two characters rather than two. And so I was and I reckon the timing of it was off by about 6 seconds. And if the person I was playing was quicker, they would have stopped me, but they didn't quite get it. So in that 6 seconds of basically sort of getting through the timers, all within the spirit of the game, I managed to do that. There was a swing of about 6 points from that, and I won that particular game by 3 points. So moments like that in this game are really unique. So in terms of, have you created something new and unique? For me, like you, somebody's played a ton of games. Yes, 100%. I've never experienced things like that before, where things like that can be done in a way where you're kind of manipulating the board in that time essence, which is why, going back to sort of the original question, I see it more as a game that uses time as a resource than a real-time game. There's a ton of elements in this game where, like obviously the council phase, playing cards in between rounds, there's loads of bits where the timers aren't in anywhere at all used. So it's just the game has timers. And I think people just need to kind of get over that and enjoy the game. The other thing I want to talk about is the component quality in this game, because like all Stonemaier games, I think it's brilliant. The boards, similar to Tapestry, have that kind of, I don't know how you describe it, like kind of, it's like a rough card feel to it, which is beautiful, similar to the rule book. The board is beautiful. The timers are really good quality. The legendary token here is just, I think, amazing. The thing that seems to kind of be creating a bit of a hoo-ha is with the meeples, which I'm sure you've had this referred to, are quite clearly Rick and Morty. I mean, I'm sure you've had this.
Yes. No, that didn't dawn on me before we released it, but I've watched the show. But it wasn't until after it got out in the world and people started saying that, and I was immediately like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird, isn't it? But the hoo-ha seems to be the fact that they're plastic and not wood. And I've heard all sorts of stories, rumors about why that is the case. I'd love to hear your take on that and your opinion on that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think they're great quality too. But I get the response because I remember when Jamie emailed me and he was talking about the components. I think it was something in, in the rule book, and I was like, oh, this should say wooden meeples, right? And he was like, well, no, we're actually starting to look at plastic meeples for the game, and just about all plastic bits. And I had a similar response. I was like, oh, wait, what, plastic? That sounds weird and different and unexpected, and is that in a bad way? So I get the initial reaction because people are so used to having wood for everything. So when you have that just kind of certain assumption, you think, oh, well, they're switching to plastic, it must be for some sort of bad reason, and they're trying to save money, or whatever reasons there might be. I don't know the full economics of it necessarily. I would leave Jamie to speak to that, but I know in my chats with them, I mean, I think they're very high quality components. And I think he likes the feel of the plastic, and I think he gotten some good response from the tapestry cubes, which were plastic as well. And it's that good thick plastic, like once I thought through, and I was like, oh, okay, it's gonna be like the plastic in the tapestry cubes, which have this like weight to them. It doesn't feel like this sort of chintzy plastic from your old Risk game or whatever. And yeah, it's really good quality, and so I think, I mean, I love the bits, and I think yeah, they've got good heft to them. They're nice, and the meeples are nice and thick. And I like the feel of the plastic and the look of them on the table. But some people just sort of like are used to wood, and so they want wood, and they think there's some nefarious reason why you'd make plastic. But I think they're good quality components, and everyone has their own personal opinion. But
yeah, I've heard all sorts of rumors. My favorite one was there was an import thing in Australia where you're not allowed to send wood into Australia, because there could be a creature in it that then destroys the Australian wildlife. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I heard something about that. Although I think Jamie said that's sorted out now, for future printings.
Right.
So he may go back to more wood, just if people prefer that more. But
yeah, well,
I mean, I like the bits. So.
I honestly couldn't care less, and I find it so weird that as a 40-year-old man who, for the rest of my life when I'm not playing games, has a relatively sort of adult life, has spent at least 5 hours over the last few weeks discussing with other adult people plastic or wooden meeples in a board.
Yeah.
Like when you drill it down to the core of what we're actually talking about, it's crazy. But yeah, I think it's just people just aren't used to change, and people aren't great with change. And I'm like, I don't get it. And it just blew me away that people were saying the component quality was anything other than brilliant, because it is just quite, in my opinion, clearly brilliant. I mean, everything's subjective, I get that, but it just is. In my humble opinion, anyway. I should probably.
No, I'm with you. I think the bits are great. It's that good heavy plastic, which has a good feel in your hand and a good weight to it. So yeah, I love how the bits turned out. But everyone has their particulars. If you really want wood, you can go to meeplesource.com. I think who have a Kickstarter for wooden meeples for Pendulum. If anyone really wants to switch over, that little like wooden character meeples they're making for.
They look great. The only upgrade I'm going to bother to get is nothing to do with the game. It's to do with my gaming experiences. I'm going to get a playmat, because I play on a wooden varnish table, which means when I'm trying to slide my card underneath, it's kind of tricky, and the game isn't hectic at all. But generally, and this is sort of the last thing I want to talk about, something is always happening in at least 45 seconds, right? Because there is a 45-second timer. And in the fact that you can be playing your stratagem cards whenever you want, generally, if you have managed to put something down in like a split second, so there's a full 44 seconds to wait until you do something, you can still be playing your cards, strategizing what you're going to do with your other things and other things going on. There is a ton of time in this game to think. But people, I have noticed, have freaked out about the fact that there are sometimes these moments in the game where there's like not a ton of stuff going on. And in my opinion of playing this game now quite a lot of times, I reckon that the maximum I've had to wait where I'm looking to do something is maybe like 35 seconds tops. And if you then compare that to a game that isn't real time, where it's turn based and you're with 2 or 3 or 4 other people, you could be waiting 5-10 minutes for your go. And that's
with some of my friends, yes.
Yeah, right. It's totally acceptable. Like Game of 5 Tribes with my son. Oh my goodness, I could be waiting half an hour for my turn. But like ultimately, I think people are just. It's funny. Like, oh, it's real time. It's too hectic. Or oh, it's real time, and I'm not doing stuff every second. It's such a weird weird vibe. The only time I've ever felt hectic is because I'm trying to slide my cards in. I can't quite get them in. To find a nice play mat to avoid that problem. But it's interesting. I think the real time thing really has sort of captured people's imaginations. But in your experience of all the games you've played and the playtests you've seen, when you do have those downtimes, when everyone has got everything on the board and everyone has played those cards, that's just that moment when you're thinking, okay, right, when that timer runs out, what do I do with it next? Like, what's your thoughts there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I find, obviously I designed the game, so I wanted to make it so that I enjoyed the pace of it because I'm biased. But I don't think I'm too far outside the bell curve. I mean, I think the game would have gotten published if I was way on one end of the spectrum, made the game for my taste, and everyone else was like, wow, this is way too slow or too fast. But it definitely is a bell curve. I'll say in the times that I spent playtesting on my own, and then from playtesting through Jamie's network and everything, you want to think of things in life as like black and white. Like, is it too slow or not? Is it too hectic or not? But honestly, like people's experience is a bell curve. So there is a small, we tune the game so that I think most all board gamers will find the pace perfectly fine. Not too slow, not too hectic. It's exciting, it's fun, you're engaged, but you're not overwhelmed. But there's absolutely these people on the tails on both sides. Where there's still some people that even with the pace it's at, they say, no, this is still too hectic, too stressful for me. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It does not reflect on their skill as a gamer or intelligence or anything. Like, I don't want anyone to feel pressured from playing this game and feeling like other people are judging them that they can't move fast enough. Like, people's brains just work differently sometimes, and it does not reflect on you as a person if you find this game too hectic. So there's a segment of people that do that, and that's where I said before, not every board game's for everyone. And then there's honestly people on the other side. I feel like it's a little smaller. We didn't get it in feedback as much, but there are still people that are like, this is too slow. Like, have you thought about 30-second, 1 minute, and a minute and a half timers? Because I just want to go.
Yeah.
And more power to them. And I'm sorry that we couldn't speed it up more. But some people's brains just work a mile a minute, and they make those decisions much more intuitively. So they're never sitting there pondering through their grand strategy. They've always just made a gut decision already, and so they feel like the game's moving too slow. So no judgment on anyone on either side. What I've found so enjoyable about making the game and seeing people play it is that interesting is to see that develop. It's an interesting space in games where the game makes you think about how you think. And now I'm kind of getting pretty meta, and you don't need to think about this to enjoy Pendulum, but just for what it's worth, that's always fascinated me outside of games. But really fascinated me as I started to make this game and get into it was how it revealed how different people think, and that it could even challenge you while you're playing the game to think about how you think. And you say, wow, I'm really falling behind because I'm trying to suss out, every single detail. Is there certain decisions I could make more instinctually?
Yeah.
Because I think, in my opinion, a well-played game, you need a mix of both.
Yeah.
Instinctual decisions and well thought out decisions. And I love that it challenges you to sort of stretch your brain across that spectrum. That sometimes this timer is coming up and 15 seconds, I was going to go there, but now I realize that spot's open and I don't have time to suss this out. But my gut instinct tells me it's going to be worth it more for me to go get those 2 popularity right now than to stay on this gold spot. And I don't know why. I haven't been able to think it out, but I've just got to make that gut decision. And then there'll be other times, like you said, I put this guy on the purple timer, I put this other one on the green. I've got 2 minutes to sit here and plan out exactly my next moves. I'm going to get that province, tuck it here, and then I'm going to do this action. And I think you need to think both ways to do well in the game. And so I love that aspect of it. I think, honestly, there could be some people who don't enjoy it because they only want to think a certain way. But I think most of us in life have to make decisions in different ways, outside of board gaming even. Sometimes, you only have a certain amount of time to get something done. And it's not always on like a 30-second scale, but there's still just always interesting times. Like if you're shopping for, a new jacket or a new car or something like that, you're always facing this tension of like, is it worth it for me to spend another hour researching this online and thinking about this and that? Or should I just make the decision with the information I have now? And so it's a muscle we're all always using, and I don't think it gets flexed as much in board games that are out there. So I love that this hopefully lets you play around with that space to think about, how do I make a decision? When do I spend more time thinking about it and less time? And how do I optimize that trade-off?
Yeah, I completely agree. So I've got to ask, you've just had your first big published game, and it seems weird to ask, but what's next? You said you got a few other things up your sleeve, and you took another game to the following design day, or expansions for this. Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, so no, like I said, I've always had this restless creative energy. So I've got other designs that I've worked on over the course while I was making Pendulum. Some that are actually pretty far along that I think are ready to start being pitched. I have no official news or anything to share, and I've really tried to focus on the rollout of Pendulum since this is my first game. I've been excited to be in the communities and see the response and be available for all that and do these great interviews like this one with you, Jim. So focus on that now, but then I definitely hope to pursue more things in the future. So I'll keep folks posted. As for what it's worth, this whole like real time, like trying to take a different approach to real time is really what sort of got me into game design. Mm-hmm. So most of the other designs that I've been working on are other sort of explorations in that space. So it's still an area that I think there's other kind of neat takes that you can bring to it. And so I'm hoping to continue to pursue that. But like I said, nothing official to pass on right now.
I've always thought a real-time adventure game, like a storytelling adventure game, would be cool because I love adventure games so much. But I always think that point where you're kind of sitting there as a group, because most of them are cooperative. You know, like, what do we do? Do we go left? Do we go right? Do we fight? Do we hide? It takes away a lot of the theme when you're sitting there debating it for ages. And it's like in real world, there's an arrow about to hit you. Like, are you, what? Like real time in an adventure game would be fun. But if go back to your game, if I were to pour open your mind, is there an expansion for Pendulum in your head?
Oh, expansion. Well, yes. Yeah, along with that restless creative energy, absolutely. There's all sorts of ideas that I've had turning around. A couple that I thought back when we were developing it, but there's actually been a couple ideas, like seeing it out there and seeing some of the playthrough videos has been an interesting experience. As in the blind playtest, we got feedback back, but we didn't like have videos of people playing it. So it's been interesting to sort of have this really detached view of watching people play it, and it sparked some ideas and thoughts for a way to potentially expand the game. As Jamie's always said, with all of his games, which I think makes sense, like we strive to make a complete game, and there wasn't anything I was leaving on the table to save as an expansion. Sure. So there's still stuff to work out about how I would integrate it and make sure it doesn't detract from what's already there. It's always a challenge with real time is people can only process so much. So you don't want to just be like, oh, here's this new mechanic. And then when you have someone who hasn't played the base game and they come over to your game night and you add all the expansions, they'll just be completely overwhelmed. So you got to be careful of stuff like that. So work to be done there, but I'd be excited to pursue that opportunity down the line.
Cool. I mean, more characters seems like an easy one in terms of components. Have you played Azul, I assume?
Played it what?
Azul.
Oh, Azul. Yes, I have. Yeah, great game.
Azul has the problem where the tiles slip all over the place. So they've got that cool little upgrade where you can like slot them in, put the tiles into slots. And I've seen somebody's already made one for your game using a 3D printer.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Yep.
Yeah. So
that's a great addition. I think
take some money out of that component. Why not make that be you? And I always thought it would be fun to add like maybe a fourth timer that has some kind of control over all of them. I thought that would be kind of fun. But anyway, I'll leave that sort of stuff to you.
Okay, interesting. All right, no, give me the free ideas. This is great.
Rabbit, it's been an utter joy talking with you. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I wish you well with this game and whatever happens next with your next games or expansions for this or whatever it is. I wish you all the best. Thank you so much for your time.
No, appreciate it, Jim. I really enjoyed chatting with you.